here we go.
Welcome to the 9 Route Fantasy Football Podcast.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back into the 9 Route Fantasy Football Podcast. Pat and Scott heading into week 11 already. Oh my gosh, it's flying, folks. We're in basically like mid-November now. Turkey is around the corner. The holidays, just hard to believe, which means your fantasy football season is starting to wind down. Right now, you probably know if you're a contender or a pretender. We're getting into the home stretch. Playoffs start for some leagues sooner than later, and it's going to be a wild ride to the finish. I know in our league of record, Pat, you and I are fighting to the bottom, as we say, and maybe hoping to angle back in our toilet bowl to get back in the action and look to maybe secure a top pick moving forward for next year. How'd you make out this week? I up and down. I got blown out by 110 in one league, but I had no shot anyway. And then won a couple other weeks so far. How'd you fare this week?
Well, I'm still winning in the leagues that I've been winning in, which is good. So the ones that I'm bound for the playoffs, it looks like I think I have one after this week. I'll have a 9-1 team, an 8-2 team, and a 7-3 team. All should be playoff contenders. And then a couple leagues I'm not doing all that well, but that's the nature of fantasy football. So I just hope that I keep winning in the leagues where I have some possible playoff potential. I don't actually think I'm like middling in any leagues. I think I'm either like really a couple games above 500 or enough below 500 to where there's no shot. Like in our league of record, I don't think either one of us could smell the playoffs if it crop dusted us when it went by. It's been a bad year for both of us. I think I played my brother this week, and it was probably his worst week of the season.
Mm-hmm. And
he's one of the winning teams, and he just got a freebie because my team I think I had 3 players on my team put up double-digit points. Yep, 3 players, and not any of them more than 12.6 points. So, just a really bad week in some of those leagues. But like I said, the ones that I'm winning in, I continue to win in, so that's good. The ones that I'm losing in, I'll continue to lose in, and that's fine as well, because usually what happens is if those things turn around, the guys that you have on your better rosters end up being the guys who end up not shining because the guys that are on your terrible teams turn things around and do a little bit better. So I take the losses where I have to take them in order to keep winning in the spots where things are going well. So I can't really complain about that. I did make a few dollars this week betting. Funny story. All the Josh Allen news came out early in the week about him potentially not playing. He was missing practice. It looked like he was going to be out. Early in the week, I put a couple bucks on the Minnesota Vikings to win outright. As it turns out, Josh Allen plays, as we all know, anybody who watched the game yesterday. The Bills were up 13 or up 10, about to go up 13 at one point, or could have gone up 13, decided to go for it on 4th down. Josh Allen throws a pick in the end zone. They end up only being up 10. But on the app that I use for betting, which I know you use as well, which is the FanDuel Sportsbook, they have the cash out option on there. So at any point in time during the game, you can generally cash out your bet. If you're up, you can make a little bit. If you're down, you can salvage a little bit of your bet and cash out early, taking a smaller loss than obviously the full amount. So it's in overtime. The Bills are about to either score to tie it with less than 2 minutes left or win the game. And like I said, I have a couple bucks on the Vikings. So I'm like, you know what? Let me cash this out now. I think I had like a 20 on there. It was offering me like $16 to cash out. So I'm like, all right, let me take it, because no way am I going to win the bet. It's either the Bills are either going to tie this thing and it's going to end in a tie, or the Bills are going to score a touchdown and I'm going to end up losing. So I go to cash it out, and as soon as I go to click the button, it grays out on me and disappears, and it says cash out not available. So I was like, are you kidding me right now? So I'm like, all right, well, there's that $20 down the drain. And literally the very next play, Josh Allen throws an interception, and the Vikings end up winning the game and end up cashing out. I ended up winning for, I think it was $60. I think it was whatever, it was like 2 to 1, 2.5 to 1, something like that in the beginning of the week. So got a little bit lucky there on that spot, and then ended up hitting another parlay later on in the day, and ended up having a good week betting, even if I went 500 on fantasy during the week. So not a bad week for me. Can't complain. Said all that just to jump into the beginning here of our episode for the week. Before we start that and give you our socials, we are on Twitter. If you'd like to follow us, we are at the 9route1 and at Scott from Delco. If you'd like to email the show, if you have any suggestions or comments, we are at the 9routeFFB@gmail.com. We also have a website if you'd like to check out any of our episodes or any of our contests or anything that we have going on. That website is www.the9routeFFB.com. I made a note in the show doc about this week. I did not realize going into the week, but as it turns out, I'm watching the games and I'm realizing that these things are going on. And it turned out that week 10 ended up being, sort of family week in the NFL. We had 3 sets of brothers playing against each other. Equinemius St. Brown and Amon-Ra St. Brown played each other. Dalvin and James Cook played against each other in that Buffalo, Minnesota game. And Nick and Joey Bosa played against each other in the Sunday night game. So that was kind of cool. And then we also had a set of first cousins, Nick and Bradley Chubb, playing against each other since Chubb got traded to the Dolphins, the Dolphins Browns game. So that was kind of a weird thing for all of it seems like all of the brothers that are in the league. I mean, the Watt brothers didn't get to play against each other. I have probably completed the family weekend here in the NFL, but pretty cool that all of these siblings got to play against each other in NFL games and ended up being a pretty cool little side story for week 10. Unfortunately, we got to get into some bad news here with our injuries and our news.
Time for the news.
We'll stick with some good news for the first part here. Jeff Saturday gets his first win as the head coach of the Indianapolis Colts. They beat the Raiders in a pretty good game. They won by 5. It was a very entertaining game, and I think Saturday did a pretty good job coaching for not having any experience. I think that he is, he's kind of what a lot of these NFL head coaches aren't, which is leaders. A lot of these guys come from either an offensive or a defensive coordinator position, and they specialize on one side of the ball. And, especially the offensive guys, guys like Sean McVay, these innovative play callers that are head coaches. And I think, and Jim Irsay, he's a little strange. He's got his quirks, but I think I see what he was going for here, because Jeff Saturday lets his offensive and defensive coordinators call the plays, and he just manages the game and manages the practices during the week. And I think that, this could actually be something that you could see other teams and other owners starting to look for, rather than looking for these super innovative play callers, because I think that there is, as we saw in the season with Nathaniel Hackett in Denver, there's something to be said for guys who just understand the game of football and understand how to lead men into, say battle, like it's a war or whatever, but that's how football is. It's, it's a very physical game. And I think there might be something to this Jeff Saturday hire that, we kind of laughed at first, but he definitely seems like he's got his head screwed on the right way, and seems like he could be a good coach moving forward.
Some interesting news just coming out as we were getting ready to get started here at the 9 route. Again, just kind of broke right as we were getting ready to start talking. It looks like their Arizona Cardinals are releasing Eno Benjamin from the roster. It just kind of popped up. It was a tweet that came from Adam Schefter. Interesting that it's happening the way it is. Obviously, with you have Keontae Ingram, you have Darrell Williams that could be, obviously players now on the waiver wire, things like that. It's kind of hard to understand. It has to be something a little bit behind the scenes, some type of locker room kerfluffle or off the field issue, or possibly something maybe even as much as, a poor performance maybe in the blocking game as a running back. He's in his 3rd year of a 4-year rookie deal. So, he's making less than $500,000. It's not like they're saving a ton maybe by doing any moves with him. it seems almost disciplinary to this point, or to make an example of somebody. I mean, in obviously James Conner was injured, and Benjamin had a couple weeks there where he filled in nicely. In our league of record, he's actually a couple slots better than James Conner for the sake of a point. So again, they're kind of like right there when it comes to each other. It's hard to figure, like we say, as far as on the field performance. We did take a note, assuming that he was active yesterday, which I don't remember seeing that he was inactive, but that he had nothing to do in yesterday's game. It doesn't look like he was targeted, no touches. Arguably that he just wasn't really on the field at all. So a dead blank slate there, coming off of a game against the Rams, which obviously they did win, but it's a little murky right now. But if Benjamin is gone from Arizona, I would assume some team is going to pick him up pretty quick, to fill in nicely. Again, the only thing that would keep teams away is if there was some off the field NFL discipline stuff that may be coming to light again, maybe in the next day or so.
You slept with Cliff Kingsbury's wife or something, probably. Who knows?
It's just so random.
I'm totally. I was trying to say that with a straight face, but
you never know, man, or somebody else's. No, and again, that's some locker room stuff that could go south fast. I mean, somebody gets in a fight with somebody. Maybe him and James Conner don't get along. Maybe he's pissed that Conner came back and he's kind of pushed to the back burner. I don't know. And again, Ingram being there as a rookie on a 4-year deal with a higher draft pedigree. Benjamin was a 7th rounder, so it's hard to tell exactly what their, modus operandi is with this, other than, again, it has to be something disciplinary. Previous game that he played in was Seattle Seahawks 2 weeks ago that they lost. Looks like Kyler Murray was sacked 5 times. Did he miss a blocking assignment, not own up to it, or has it always been an issue? I don't follow the Cardinals. I just know of their players. But it's very interesting to see that this just randomly pops up for a player that looked like he had some upside and promise in an offense that, again, has found ways to use him effectively when there. But again, I think he's going to latch on to somebody that's looking for a little depth at running back, possibly even in their own division, that's aware of his ability and maybe look to move forward with him there. So just keep an eye on him. I wouldn't drop him right away to see where everything falls out. But if it's NFL based, then maybe that's a different story. It could be facing a suspension. We don't know about these guys get those random drug tests and stuff like that. But this just is very weird. Not weird considering, Cliff Kingsbury and some of the calls he makes. But at the end of the day, it's just kind of was like, wow, really? Again, because I know they have some injury news too that we're going to talk about down the road. But an odd one, Benjamin, no longer with the Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah, another running back. Well, this is an injury, not a release, thank goodness. But Leonard Fournette left the game in Germany at the end of the 4th quarter there. It turns out as a hip pointer, he should be okay to play in Week 12 after their bye. I would still recommend picking up Rachaad White off of your waivers if he's available, which we'll talk about him a little bit later. But, it looks like, Fournette should be okay. It was just something that kind of stung him and knocked him out of the end of that game against the Seahawks this week.
Next guy up is Chicago Bear running back Khalil Herbert. Also picked up a hip injury during their loss to the Detroit Lions. Still being evaluated. Nothing has come out yet out of Chicago. So that's something you're going to want to keep an eye on. He's obviously the top points producer out of that Chicago Bears backfield. I know their offense is kind of taken off in the last couple of weeks. Looks like they finally opened up everything and are allowing their players to finally maybe live up to their hype. Again, in our league of record coming into this week, we were looking at, RB 23, pretty good area to be in. So the hip injury, we don't know how bad it is. If it's something that's going to hold Khalil Herbert out for a week or two, if you're a David Montgomery owner, maybe you have him handcuffed already, you're probably going to be sitting okay. Other than that, I mean, I know there's Treston Ebner, who is the rookie that was like the 3rd guy. You might want to look to maybe pick him up as a backup because they may try to feed him as much as it did Herbert if he's out for this week.
Yeah, scary injury in the Cardinals-Rams game. At the end of the game, Cooper Kupp went down. He went up for a pass. As he was coming down, Cardinals defender sort of came in to tackle him, came in low, and sort of hit his lower leg and ankle area right as he was hitting the ground. And he ended up leaving the game, didn't come back. They're doing an MRI today to find out exactly the extent of the injury. When interviewed after the game, head coach Sean McVay said it didn't look or sound good, but there's nothing definitive yet as far as how much time he's going to miss. I did see a report with Ian Rappaport from NFL Network earlier that said they're expecting him to miss some time. As far as how much some is, they didn't say. Nobody really knows at this point, but if you are a Cooper Kupp owner, you will most likely be without him for at least a few weeks. It does seem like they avoided the worst case scenario, which was a broken bone or like I said, like a torn ACL or MCL on the knee. It's definitely going to keep him out at least next week and possibly a few weeks into the future. So make sure that you are making arrangements to have Cooper Kupp out of your lineup if you have him in any of your fantasy rosters.
Yeah, another wide receiver. This happened yesterday in the Kansas City-Jacksonville matchup. Juju Smith-Schuster left the game. He was being evaluated for a head injury, a concussion. I did see actually somebody, I think in one of our leagues, mentioned that maybe after catching the ball or on a run, he put his head down. And obviously if he maybe had any helmet-to-helmet contact or got hit pretty hard in the head. Yeah, nowadays that's not going to take much for that concept. In the NFL, obviously, with concussion protocol, they would have taken him out of the game immediately. And again, he's going to be evaluated. We'll see if there's any lingering effects. If he gets cleared this week to come back, then it's probably going to be business as usual. You do have some guys floating out there on the waiver wire that are probably still available. Kadarius Toney is still available in some leagues. Sky Moore could be floating around out there. It depends. I mean, again, you have to kind of monitor this and see what happens. By Wednesday, we should have a pretty good, clear idea if he's in protocol still, if he's out of it, and how massive this was. But again, Juju Smith-Schuster, keep an eye on him. Concussion in the game this week, being evaluated. We'll see how he does with concussion protocol.
Jerry Jeudy also injured himself early in that Denver game. Ended up not registering a target in that game. Got hurt so early. He is also getting an MRI. They're saying that it looks like it's something behind his ankle, a muscle behind his ankle. It's not an Achilles tendon, which is a good thing. Those are potentially season ending, but it is strain or sprain in a muscle behind the ankle is what they're saying so far. So again, just something to keep an eye on as the week goes on. Usually these ankle injuries with guys who are, receivers, running backs, making quick cuts, things like that. Generally these tend to either keep them out or slow them down to the point where they aren't very productive when they're in there. So if you do have Jerry Jeudy, I would say at least for next week, you might want to look for some sort of replacement just to be safe in case he either doesn't play or does play but is limited in that game against the Raiders.
This next one kind of hurts us a little bit here at the 9 route for a Philadelphia Eagle.
It hurts us.
I'm not making any puns. It hurts us.
I'm not above a pun.
No, I know you're not. Not in the standings in our league either. You're welcome.
Yeah, that was a good one. That was a good one.
But all kidding aside, big name for us here. And again, he's a guy that helped me win back-to-back titles back in the day. Zach Ertz, former Eagle, who's been with the Arizona Cardinals. This is his first full season. He was traded last year out there and kind of almost had like a career renaissance, so to speak, and has been basically the Zach Ertz of old, coming into, obviously yesterday's game was the tight end 3, had been doing everything that he normally did. He's no yak Zach. I get that. He doesn't get the extra yardage, but making the receptions, getting the touchdowns, a couple 2-point conversions. It didn't look good from the jump. Basically, there was a 12-yard reception. He sustained a knee injury and I believe was carted off the field to the locker room. And through the game that he did not return. Obviously, that's a bad sign. The cart's a bad sign. He's not a kid anymore. And then, unfortunately, as of today, they were hoping to avoid it. He was in a brace, but MRI has ruled significant damage to his knee, and he will miss the rest of the season. Going to have season-ending surgery, and kind of puts this guy at a bit of a crossroad. I mean, to say he has nothing left to prove is one thing in and of itself. Super Bowl champion, probably down the road, probably going to angle pretty hard and probably be a Hall of Famer. He does hold the season record for receptions, I believe, still. I don't think anybody's passed him yet.
Yeah, by a tight end.
Yeah, by a tight end. I mean, and that's pretty high air considering how unique that position is. Obviously, somebody down the road might clip that, with the level of athleticism that we see out of these guys nowadays. But, he obviously still had, let's see, 1-2 more years left on his deal. We'll see how that shakes out, but definitely hard to see for Zach Ertz to go down. Trey McBride was the rookie that was highly drafted, top rookie tight end taken this season, and Steven Anderson are the backups out there. This week's matchup might be a little tough, but the Trey McBride, it might be worth a pickup on the waiver wire. We'll probably talk about that in a little bit, though.
Yeah, and the last injury we're going to talk about, another tight end, Gerald Everett, went down in the second quarter with a groin injury. Because we record on Monday, really difficult to get updated injury news. So we're not really sure the extent of the injury or if it's going to cost him any time, missed time. I mean, other than the time he already missed in that game. But another name to watch is Gerald Everett has been a pretty good option at the tight end position in fantasy. So just if you roster Gerald Everett, just make sure that you're keeping an eye on the injury updates, and also as waivers will run usually Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, make sure that you have another option. If Gerald Everett is the only tight end on your roster, make sure that you have another option just in case he cannot go next week. Usually with the groin injuries, they tend to get some rest and they're okay, and you can generally play again. But that's the general rule. That's not the rule for every single groin injury. So just keep an eye on that moving forward.
And with that, luckily, we are out of the injury news. We're going to talk about, obviously, the corollary to that, which is waiver wire for Week 11. Weekly waiver wire. There are 4 teams on a bye this week. For Week 11, the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Miami Dolphins, Seattle Seahawks, and those Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So we know that everybody's going to have a little bit of play on those teams. You're going to be looking for backup quarterback concepts. Maybe you've been streaming, maybe not, and obviously your skilled positions. So we're going to give you a couple names here to get you started and kind of get those thoughts rolling maybe for that. Or if you're just looking to make a change, somebody hasn't been playing too well for you for the last couple weeks. First up, we're going to talk about Matt Ryan. The guy got his big surprise start this week and performed. And obviously against the Raiders, it seems like that's not hard to do. He did put up close to 25 points in our league of record. Quietly, Matt Ryan was doing pretty well as a quarterback. He hasn't played in 2 weeks and is still one of the top guys in yardage. He's still a top 20 quarterback in our league after this week. What was done down there was obviously weird. We talked about Indianapolis at length. So if Matt Ryan is available, which he more than likely is, he's only owned in about 7% of leagues. Everybody dropped him after the Sam Ehlinger bump up and all that stuff. With Jeff Saturday, he may realize that you can't do a guy dirty like that. He might win a week for you. He might not win the league, but he's definitely going to bring a presence to that offense. If Matt Ryan's out there, he's definitely a good bye week fill-in, obviously, depending on his matchups and things of that nature. They have a tough matchup coming up this week against the Philadelphia Eagles, but garbage time, things of that nature, he'll find a way to get you some points. So Matt Ryan, take a look at him. He is available and the starting quarterback now for the Indianapolis Colts.
Yeah, another quarterback that's available if you have a QB on bye. Marcus Mariota, he's only 38% rostered in leagues. Guy's not a league winner per se. He's not one of those guys who's, going to necessarily put up 30 points a week. But because of his rushing ability, he has a decent floor where he's really not going to submarine your team and kill you. Of the 9 games that he's played so far this year, he's only had 2 weeks under 10 points. And all of the other weeks, he's been above 19 points. So, again, with that rushing floor that he provides, he's not going to throw the ball a ton. He's not Patrick Mahomes. He's not going to go out there and sling it 45 times and throw 4 touchdowns. But you pick up 60, 70 yards with your legs. You throw a touchdown. You rush for a touchdown. All of a sudden, you're looking at a 24, 25-point week. So, if you got Tom Brady, if you got Tua Tagovailoa, or even Geno Smith, who's on a bye this week, who's been a really good quarterback for fantasy this year so far. If you got one of those guys and you're looking for a replacement, especially for this week, Marcus Mariota is not a bad option. Again, he's not going to be a league winner, but he can get you through. He can get you through a bye week. He can get you through an injury if you need it.
Next name up, a little controversial. Some of that has worn off, but Deshaun Watson. He's only owned in about 35, 36% of leagues. He can start practicing as of today and can play as soon as week 13 against his former team, the Houston Texans. The irony that this was lined up this way couldn't be any kind of
that wasn't
intrigue.
Planned at all.
Nah, the NFL would never do that for ratings, not at all. Right now, in our league of record, I believe Jacoby Brissett has done decent work overall and has been able to be a tangible quarterback. He's QB 20, has just kept things moving. They don't expect him to be that guy. Basically just holding, not holding the clipboard, but, holding the ball, so to speak, until this finally came to fruition. We know the player of Deshaun Watson and the ability that he had with the Houston Texans and what he did for that team as a all-around solid quarterback. He can run with the football. He can pass the football, a smart decision maker, touchdowns, you name it. Like he gets you points. He's going to be that guy. It'll be interesting to see how much he does factor in right away. Does he come back in and he gets the game speed back right away? Is it going to take him a couple weeks to get some rapport with some of these guys as far as wide receivers? They don't have a potent passing offense as we speak. The Browns are only getting about 217 yards through the air. We know they're a ground-based team, Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, and the like. But it does give them an added piece to that offense where they haven't had a quarterback of this caliber, albeit if he's that Deshaun Watson of a couple years back, then maybe there's something to look for. If he's available in your league, and you're looking to maybe pick up a piece that could be something for a playoff run, maybe he's a guy you can get right now and stash and just start to monitor how quickly he does get back to the Deshaun Watson of old. We'll see what happens, but he is available, Deshaun Watson, in most leagues right now.
Just real quick, if your trade deadline hasn't passed and you're looking to pick up some players who may be on the rise, picking up some of the pieces in this passing offense, not a bad idea. I know David Njoku was probably dropped in a lot of leagues when he was injured. Mari Cooper had a good season with Brissett, and Donovan Peoples-Jones had a good game this past week, but hasn't had the best season overall. If any of those guys are available on your waivers, or if you can make a trade to get one of those pieces at a bit of a discount, I would go out and do that, because I do think that Deshaun Watson instantly makes this offense better. Maybe not the very first week. Like Scott said, there's definitely some, getting used to game speed after not playing for basically a year and a half. But once he figures it out and does look like that Deshaun Watson of old, this offense could completely change, and you could see a market improvement in their scoring, in their passing numbers. And I think if you get a couple of those pieces on your roster, they could help you to a fantasy championship. Now we're going to jump into some of the running backs that are available. Try to keep this as much as possible to players that are available in at least 50% of leagues. The first running back is exactly, at least from the leagues that I look, which are NFL.com, ESPN, and Yahoo. This player is roughly 50% rostered in those leagues. It's Kenny Drake for the Baltimore Ravens. It's possible that Gus Edwards may be out again in week 11. If that ends up being the case, then Drake is a guy that you can pick up off of waivers and immediately put in your starting lineup this week. They go against Carolina, who is not very good against the running back position in fantasy football. And with all the injuries that Baltimore seems to have been having at the running back position over the past couple years, Drake is a guy who, if you pick him up now, I would keep him on your bench. I would try my hardest to not drop him if possible, because these running backs in Baltimore, they just, for whatever reason, just cannot stay healthy. And, Drake is basically going to be the guy until Gus Edwards gets back, until J.K. Dobbins, if he ends up coming back this year at all. But if not, then Drake is the guy, and he's the guy on a predominantly rush first offense. So if he's available in your league, definitely go out and get him rostered right away.
Another name had a pretty solid game yesterday, so it's going to be interesting to see how this backfield moves forward. With the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Rachaad White, he's a rookie. He's only owned in about 25% of leagues, roughly. going into a bye week, so you may actually see some owners even release him. He had a nice game yesterday. A lot of people are hyping it as a total takeover of the backfield. We shall see. 22 carries for 105 yards Sunday in the Buccaneers win over the Seattle Seahawks in Germany. Through the season, you've started to see his usage increase. Leonard Fournette has had some games where he wasn't quite, the Leonard Fournette of old, so to speak. That's probably a big thing there that is what is driving this, that people see that the rookie is starting to take on more and more. Could it turn into a true timeshare or a hot hand concept? Possibly. But when it comes to Brady and things of that nature, he's always going to kind of lean on the guys that he can trust. If this kid makes a mistake, he's not going to see the light of day type of thing. That is how quarterbacks go. And we know that, albeit that there is a coach there in Todd Bowles who is a good coach, it's going to be interesting to see if he does truly take this over. Going into a bye week, Fournette did get a little banged up and had to leave the game in the fourth quarter. So that had a little bit of an effect on the amount of touches that Rachaad White did receive. Going into a bye week, again, we'll see how things get, reevaluated health-wise and whatnot. And I'm sure based on his performance, they are going to look to get the football in his hands more. Brady does like, players that can make things happen. And if he's another piece to that puzzle in a division that is still up for grabs in the NFC South, I could see Rachaad White becoming that kind of guy. So if he's available, especially on a bye week, he's worth a stash. Pick him up and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, this one here, we're going to talk about two running backs from the same team. Both are less than 50% rostered, and both probably should be more than 50% rostered. Isaiah Pacheco and Jerick McKinnon for the Kansas City Chiefs. Pacheco was about 24% rostered, and McKinnon is 13% rostered. I think the Chiefs are officially finally moving away from Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He was barely involved in their game in Week 10, and this backfield seems like it's more of a split between Pacheco and McKinnon now, where Pacheco is taking a lot of the rushing work and McKinnon is getting, the pass catching work and the long down and distance and, 2-minute drill, stuff like that. So these are both guys who play for one of the better offenses, the highest scoring offense in the league right now. So having them on your roster gives you an option to put in the flex or in your RB2 spot week to week if you have any injuries, bye weeks, anything like that where, you just need a guy to plug in that can, maybe get you somewhere around to 12 points. Pacheco seems like the guy who's going to get a lot of the goal line carries, the, potential touchdowns. And McKinnon is probably a better option in a PPR league because he has been getting a lot of, like I said, the pass catching work in the offense. So again, if you're weak at the running back position and you need a guy to just jump in there and get you some points, get you through a week, either of these guys can get that job done. Both of them have boom potential week just because of the offense that they play on. I think Pacheco is probably more riskier because of the fact that he does what CEH does well, whereas McKinnon sort of keeps that specialized pass catching role to himself. So McKinnon to me seems like the safer guy, but also a guy who could potentially be scripted out of a game if the Chiefs get up big and don't really need to throw the ball a ton, which even when they're up big, they seem to throw the ball a ton anyway. But definitely two guys that you can throw on your roster and plug into your lineup in a pinch.
And we're going to talk about another running back that is surprisingly becoming more of a factor than anybody, including myself, thought coming into this season. Jaylen Warren of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Very low ownership, 15, maybe 20%, depending on your league. If you're in dynasty, stuff like that, that's probably not already been rostered. But there was mention coming into this week that the Pittsburgh Steelers were going to start to get him more involved. I myself was a Najee Harris truther. I thought he was going to have a monster season, albeit with a suspect offensive line and so on and so forth, but that they'd lean on him a little bit more. There was a Liz Frank injury that was downplayed at the beginning of the season during training camp, and whether or not that's a factor or not is kind of not been released by any team sources or anything, but his production is down, way down from what it was last year. His overall effectiveness, which I know in some of the metrics, he wasn't an efficient runner when it came to certain opportunities, but he still put up the stats. He had 90 receptions, over 300 carries. and had the look of the next Alabama workhorse. That hasn't happened this season. Jaylen Warren was highly touted in training camp as a rookie, very solid hard runner, gets the yardage, and Mike Tomlin and the team really liked him a lot. Wasn't going to take that spot, but he's had double-digit scoring in the last 2 games, PPR, of course. Played on about 43% of the snaps. So that's some usage, that's some field time, and that's going to get you points in a hurry. So for Pittsburgh, for Jaylen Warren, for you, I would say you definitely got to get him on your team. I know a lot of Harris people probably had him as a handcuff just to maybe make it a safer play. And maybe you're starting to see that is kind of starting to turn into a possible borderline timeshare. Jaylen Warren, if he's available, pick him up. Depending on how things go with Pittsburgh, he could end up being a de facto RB1 sooner than later.
All right, so let's move into the wide receivers. There's quite a few of these, so we're going to try to get through them fairly quickly. First and foremost, with the Cooper Kupp injury, go out and check and see if Allen Robinson is available in your league. He's owned in roughly 56% of the leagues. I know it's a little bit higher than the 50% threshold that we try to keep these guys under, but I felt like he was such a big, important add this week that if he is available in your league, please go out and pick him up. The Rams have other options at wide receiver. Ben Skoronek's had a good year. Van Jefferson came back recently off of injury, still kind of, getting his feet wet in the offense a little bit. But Allen Robinson, I think, is going to have to be the guy for the next couple of weeks while Cooper Kupp is out. I don't love having to say that and having to put Allen Robinson in my lineup if I have him, but the Rams are going to have to throw the ball to somebody. And I think Cooper being out could sort of force Matthew Stafford and Allen Robinson to kind of get on the same page a little bit. And that could actually be good for this team as a whole for the rest of the season, because when Kupp does come back, maybe there's a little bit more chemistry between Robinson and Stafford moving forward due to the fact that, this is kind of being forced on them. But also just go out and pick up Van Jefferson, pick up Ben Skowronek. We don't know yet how this offense is going to look without Cooper Kupp. So rostering as many of these options as you can afford to roster is a smart move until things kind of shake out. And then you can kind of see who ends up being the target leader, who ends up being the playmaker on the offense. But definitely check for those 3 guys specifically and pick them up and just see what happens over the next few weeks.
Next guy up, we're looking at, for those of you that were paying attention, Christian Watson had his breakout game. I was very surprised to see that happened the way that it happened against the Dallas Cowboys, who have an excellent defense, secondary and otherwise. Very low ownership. A lot of people would have dropped him, struggling with some injuries and things like that throughout the season. I kind of had him, I know, Pat, we kind of talked about it, I think, last week, to have him a little bit written off, and we'll see what happens. He had an amazing game. 4 catches on 8 targets, 107 yards, 3 touchdowns. You saw Aaron Rodgers have a solid rapport with him, and if it's just the injuries that were holding him back, and he is going to play up to that first-round talent, second-round talent ability that he had, that he came out of college with, if he has games like this for the rest of his career, then he is going to be that guy. If he's available, I would say it's a no-brainer. You need to go out and get this guy immediately, because to have a game like he did with a quarterback like that, again, there's some drops on the way. Yeah, is he going to put this up all the time? No. But this is why they drafted him, to be that guy in this kind of game. Christian Watson, if he's available, don't even hesitate. Make him a priority waiver pickup. He has potential to possibly win your league down the road, because the Packers, as poor as they played at the beginning of the season, could angle back into a potential playoff spot, and they're not going to give up without a fight.
Yeah, absolutely. I think anytime you play with a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, you have the potential to do great things. If you've listened to our podcast, since the preseason, I said coming into the season that Watson has the ability to be the best wide receiver in this draft class. He's got the athletic talent. It was just a matter of, getting on the same page with Rodgers. And it looks like, they were at least able to do that in this game this past week against Dallas. Another wide receiver pickup that you could be looking at. I think we're starting to get into a spot now where these are more of, if you have roster space, you can add these guys. I think Robinson and Christian Watson are must-adds. I think you have to create space for those guys, unless your team is just stacked. But these are some other guys where if you're, again, you had some injuries, you got some people bye week and you need some fill-ins, these are guys that could do it for you. Darius Slayton, he's only 4% owned in the three major fantasy sites. He's basically become the number one option in this offense. I was very big on Juan Robinson. We've been talking about him, or I've been talking about him specifically for the past couple of weeks. I still think that there's the chance for Robinson. He seems to be more like the gadget guy, like what Rondell Moore was last year, which is, sort of the low A dot guy, gets targeted around the line of scrimmage, and then, the team kind of expects him to make guys miss and get some yards after the catch. Whereas Slayton is more of your traditional wide receiver, goes out, runs good routes, and has better speed than I think he gets credit for. The Giants are not a high volume passing offense, so I wouldn't go out and pick up Slayton and expect to be able to just put him in my lineup every week. But if the matchup is good, which I think it will be this week, and again, you need a wide receiver to plug into a flex spot or wide receiver you play with one of those really deep leagues where you have like 3 or 4 wide receivers that you have to play. Slayton is not a bad option. I actually have him on one of my dynasty rosters and had him in my lineup this week, and it paid off for me. So Slayton is definitely a guy who, isn't going to be that guy every week, but will have his ups and downs. And if you catch him on a good week, could definitely help you win a week in your fantasy league.
Another rookie wide receiver that is possibly angling back into being what he was touted to be. Treylon Burks coming back off of a little IR stint with a toe injury. Yes, they can be serious in the NFL. He's only owned in about 22% of leagues right now. Made his way back onto the field for this week, was cleared to play. It was interesting to see how he was going to be used. Played about 56% of the snaps, 6 targets in his first game back from injury, in an offense that is kind of trying to still find itself. You had a Tannehill injury. You had Malik Willis playing for a little bit. Robert Woods has been disappointing for the most part. I know Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, I can never say that name right. Ikhine. Had a nice little game yesterday as well. So, again, Burks was supposed to be the guy that they traded Brown to become the next heir apparent, so to speak. If he's available, definitely worth a spot on your roster and to see how things shake out. For a rookie first-round wide receiver to be a factor is probably going to be something. And with that time off, he was maybe able to take in a little bit more of the playbook and start to get things down. So Treylon Burks is available. Definitely worth a spot on your roster moving forward.
The Raiders had, before this game this past week, had placed Hunter Renfrow and Darren Waller on the IR. Both are designated to return at some point, so they must miss 4 games before they can come back. In that time, you can pick up and potentially start Mac Hollins. He's only about 14% rostered, and he kind of becomes the number 2 pass catching option on the team behind Devontae Adams, obviously. Hollins has always been good. I remember him when he was here in Philadelphia, making big plays in the preseason, and then just for whatever reason, just couldn't get on the field very much in the regular season, but is a solid player. I think, has the build. He's 6, I think he's 6'4", about 210 pounds. So he's a big guy, big target, pretty quick, good hands. And he plays for a team that, they just continue to lose ball games, which, isn't necessarily good for the Raiders, but is good for your fantasy team because it generally means that they're going to be in close games where they're going to be in passing scripts. They're going to have to throw the ball. And with just Devontae Adams basically there, Foster Moreau ended up with a good game and he can do his damage while Darren Waller is out. But I think Mac Hollins kind of gets the biggest boost from Renfrow and Waller being on the IR. So again, if you have space, I'm not telling you to go out and, you have to add Mac Hollins, but he's already had one really good game this year and it's within his range of possibilities to have another one. So again, you can throw him on your roster as a back of the bench type of guy and break glass in case of emergency type thing.
Another wide receiver that has quietly started to live up to a little hype from last year, so to speak. Terrace Marshall Jr. of the Carolina Panthers. A very light ownership, 15, maybe 20% in some leagues. He's been in 85% of the snaps over the last 4 weeks, 5 targets a game over that stretch. Just looking back at some of what he's done He's had 2 double-digit games in our league of record. Last week was the second game in 3 weeks against the Atlanta Falcons, so he was kind of held to just 1 catch for 43 yards, albeit a big one. So, there was potential. Only 2 targets. They knew to cover him up, but had put up 12, almost 13 points and a little over 14 in back-to-back weeks. If he's going to start to get that kind of usage, it's going to be interesting to see. I know quarterback-wise, there was P.J. Walker. We didn't mention it, but we're not going to mention Carolina Panther quarterbacks too much. P.J. Walker, high ankle sprain, possibly not, or more than likely out for this week, I believe. So that could be a Baker Mayfield start. We'll see if they have the same chemistry moving forward. But if Terrace Marshall's out there, worth hanging on to if he's starting to get the credit that he deserves from the quarterback for his abilities on the field. LSU product in his second season. It remains to be seen if he will be a thing moving forward, but worth a pickup if you have a roster spot.
This next one I'm just going to kind of breeze through, and then we'll move on to the tight ends. We told you last week to pick up Odell Beckham Jr. He was at 21% rostership last week. He's up to 37% now. He's looking to sign with the team soon, hopefully. We don't know where he's going to go, but we do know that he's more than likely going to go to a team that has playoff potential, that's looking to make a playoff push. And I don't see teams, at the bottom of the league being willing to pay a guy like Odell Beckham what he's asking for to just, finish out a bad season. So more than likely he's going to end up with a good offense somewhere. The Chiefs, Bills, potentially back with the Giants. They could use some pass catching help. Cowboys, there's a couple rumored places, but if he's available in your league, go ahead and grab him and just stash him. Again, if you have room on your bench, I don't think he's going to be a major impact guy. You might not even get to put him in your lineup until, the fantasy playoffs. And then are you really going to trust him? So it's one of those things where I'm kind of rostering him in a league just to, keep him away from my other fantasy managers in that league, just in case he does end up on a good offense. And I don't want to have to play him in the finals of, one of my fantasy championships.
Finally, we're going to finish out here with a couple of tight ends that are possibly still available. One should be, one maybe not so much based on his recent performance. First up, we're going to talk about Cole Kmet of those Chicago Bears. A lot of people felt like it was going to be a breakout season for him, albeit that offense had some question marks. And as we talked about earlier, mentioning the Khalil Herbert injury, that offense has really, really taken off. Justin Fields looks like the kind of quarterback that they thought they were getting. Everything seems to be clicking, and Cole Kmet is just that guy. 5 touchdowns in the last 3 games, tight end 1 and 2 the past 2 weeks. He is playing at an elite level right now. They are getting him the football. Again, last year we saw a lot of play, but he couldn't get the touchdowns. Now, if he's getting everything, he's making big plays down the field. This guy is probably a little higher in ownership now, definitely with bye week fill-ins and the recent performance. He's probably owned in just about half the league. Could still be available for some of those teams that are, a little gun shy to maybe pick him up right away. If he's out there, he's another no-brainer right now if he keeps this up. Even half production would make him a top 10, obviously, and to have a top 10 tight end is a pretty big deal. If Cole Kmet can continue his performance, that would be great to have on your roster, especially sliding into a playoff slot and trying to get a championship this season.
Yeah, I definitely think the Bears' offensive pieces could help you win a championship. This is one of those mid-season turnarounds where, getting these guys on your roster and probably, like you said, should have gotten them on your roster, as soon. And this is the reason why a lot of our waiver pickups seem like the Christian Watson one, for example. Yeah, of course. Yeah, he had 3 touchdowns. Of course, you're going to say pick him up. But the reason that we're sort of hitting on this and making sure that you understand that you need to grab these players now is because if Christian Watson has another, let's say, another 100-yard, 1 touchdown week, everyone in your league is going to be clamoring to get Watson. And he's going to, if you're doing a fab waiver system, he's going to be bid through the roof to the point where you have to pay probably 50, 60% of your fab money. And that still may not even get it done. The reason that we try to get on these guys early and tell you to grab them early is because that's when they're the cheapest. It's like a stock. If you can invest when it's low, you can reap the rewards and the benefits when it's high. So if Kmet is still available in your league, please go pick him up, get him on your roster, even if you don't need him. If you have Mark Andrews or Travis Kelce or whoever, pick up Cole Kmet anyway. Even if you don't end up playing him, it's better than having to play against him, especially if you get one of these Justin Fields games where he blows up and Cole Kmet is the tight end one again. So definitely go out and pick these guys up. Another guy that you maybe not as high a priority as Kmet, but a guy who has slowly kind of worked his way into being a top 12 tight end in PPR leagues, Juwan Johnson for the New Orleans Saints. He's only about 8% owned, but he's been a top 10 tight end for 3 of the last 4 weeks. He's playing just around 25% of the snaps during that stretch and has 4 touchdowns in his last 4 games. He's going to be a little bit of a touchdown-dependent tight end because he doesn't get a ton of targets. But we remember a couple years ago with guys like Robert Tonyan, guys like Dawson Knox. These guys finished in the top 6 at the tight end position just based off of touchdown production. Juwan Johnson is one of those guys who has slowly climbed. He didn't have a finish inside the top 18 for the first 6 weeks of the season. And then tight end 2, tight end 8, and tight end 4, 3 of the last 4 weeks. He's starting to get more involved in the offense. He's starting to get looks in the red zone. And like I said, he's caught 4 touchdowns in the last 4 games. If you are in need of a tight end, go out and pick up Juwan Johnson. He may not be a start every single week. He actually has a couple of tough matchups coming up. But he's a guy that, again, if you have an injury, if you have a bye week, if you have a tight end who isn't one of those top few guys who just starts to fall off, which we know tight ends can do, you have an option now that you can plug into your lineup. So please go out, pick up Juwan Johnson. Just throw him on the end of your bench. Keep him away from someone else and keep him available for you to use in an emergency situation, or maybe even be your starter, depending on who your tight end is at this point. If you had Zach Ertz, Juwan Johnson's a perfect replacement if Cole Kmet is not available in your league.
All right, folks, and that is going to do it for our Week 11 news, injuries, and our waiver wire pickups. Again, Jacksonville, Miami, Seattle, Tampa Bay are on a bye, so you may need some options there, and hopefully we gave you some insight as to who, what, when, where, why, how when it comes to filling in those gaps or picking up a guy, again, for a stretch playoff run or to keep away from an opponent so that, again, they don't use that guy against you down the road. That's always a good strategy to have. We do appreciate everybody here for listening to us at the 9 Route. You can check us out at our website with all the links at the9routeffb.com. Also, we are at the9routeffb@gmail.com if you want to shoot us an email. At the 9 Route on Twitter. I am at Scott from Delco. Please feel free to reach out. Let us know how we're doing. You have questions about our takes, or if you have a question about a last minute lineup, what should I do? Again, we love that stuff. You can hit us up again on Twitter. You can shoot us an email. Check us out. Definitely here at the 9 Route. We do appreciate everybody for listening. Speaking of those that listen and support, I want to give a big shout out to Mickey's Protocol Pub in Tuckerton, New Jersey. Mickey and the boys and girls over there, it's just the best place. I mean, for everybody that knows about that area, it's a great spot to go. Specials all the time. Kids eat free. This is a great spot. Thursday night matchups, swing by Mickey's, take it all in, tell them we said hi. And again, they are a good friend of the show here at the 9 Route.
Yeah, thank you to Mickey's once again for supporting the show. And like Scott said, that's going to do it for this week. Hopefully we were able to give you some good waiver wire pickups, some guys that you can look at, again, with these 4 teams on bye and with all of these unfortunate injuries that we had to go through. We know that some of your rosters are hurting out there, and hopefully these options that we gave you are some guys that can help to get you through and take you deep into your fantasy playoffs. Until next week.
Peace.